Well, hi, everybody. Doug Schomer with Visiting Angels here in Rochester, Minnesota. And I'm bringing to you today a good friend of mine who has authored a book called If Only You Would Have Asked. And Joan and I met here a few years ago. I looked at her book, I got a copy of it, and I read through it. And it really hit home for me. And one of the reasons it hit home for me so much was I had a grandpa that I loved dearly, and he died when he was about 21 years old back in the 60s. And I didn't have enough common sense at that time to sit down and really talk to him about some of the things that today I wish I would have asked him. And this book really made me think about that and how important it is with seniors. And then we had run an article just recently in our newsletter about the importance of grandchildren and children in the lives of the elderly. And this book hits so close to that. So I talked to Joan and we decided that we would do a little interview about the book. So let me introduce Joan Bachman of Rochester, Minnesota. Hi, Joan. How are you doing today?
Good, Doug. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's great to see you again. Um, Joan, you had a co-author with this book. Can you tell me a little bit about who your co-author was, and tell me a little bit about why you decided to write this book?
Okay, well, I was very blessed that my co-author on this book was my mother, and she passed away just a little over a year ago. And I'm forever grateful that this was something, her legacy, part of her legacy was that she and I were able to write this book. And Mom always was a wonderful example of someone who was so interested in others and always had questions to ask. And she said to me that, the beauty of this book is the questions never get old. And so even though she may not be here to deliver them herself, the questions are as relevant now as they were when we wrote them a few years ago. And
Well, I,
here's to you, Mom.
I remember you telling me that your
Yeah.
father-in-law was not doing
Yeah.
real well at that time. He was up in years, and you would go visit him.
Right. And yeah, good
Go ahead.
story there. Because the question is, well, how did this book come about? And as Doug just said, my father-in-law was living in his own home. He lived in the Twin Cities and I was in Rochester. And it was a cold Minnesota winter and he didn't get out and his world was getting smaller. And so as the daughter-in-law, I loved him and I would worry about him being alone so much. So I would make the trip to go up and see him. And of course, it was fun. We'd sit at his kitchen table and I probably brought a treat and told him what the kids had been doing. And then, the biggest activity for him was kind of sitting there looking out the back window at the rabbits. And after an hour or so, I kind of would look at my clock and decide it was time, to head home. And I gave him a hug and said, "You hang in here and I'll see you next time." But I really didn't know if those visits were making any difference. And at that time, I was sharing with my mom that, gosh, those visits with Bill were becoming so long. And it wasn't long after that she gave me a notebook. And in the notebook, there were a lot of questions. And she said, next time you go see Bill, take these questions and ask him some of these questions and leave it on the counter for the grandchildren. They might enjoy this too. And I thought, well, it's worth a try. And so took the notebook with me. And unfortunately, the next visit, Bill's health was deteriorating and those questions never got asked. And not long thereafter, he died. And it was maybe, I don't know how many months later, Mom and I were talking and agreed that there must be thousands of people just like Bill who, for all kinds of reasons, are isolated, lonely, They don't feel that they have anything of value to talk about. What are they doing? Not getting out much. And that was really the impetus for If Only You Would Ask. Because mom was always convinced that everyone has stories to share. Everyone, if only we ask the right questions. And looking back, when I think of all the hours that I spent talking about the weather, when I could have been asking him questions about his growing up years or his first job, or how did he meet his wife? I mean, the list is endless, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about those topics in a minute. Is that
Yes,
right?
and, but that's one of the things that, I wish I would have had this book years ago. I wish when I was 21 years old and I was losing my grandpa that I would have had this book in my hands and would have asked him some of these questions because
Mhm.
he's long gone. And as I got older, Grandma lived on until I was in my 40s, and so I would ask her once in a while things like how did she meet Grandpa and
Mhm.
some of the things they would do to, and she told me some cute stories. She said they'd call him the Candy Man because he
Mhm.
always had gumdrops in his pocket when he was a young guy. And she told me the story about they didn't have much money. They were very young when they got married. They ran away from. They each had a very abusive alcoholic father, so they
Mm.
ran away young, and they met and they got married young, and they were married for 60 some years,
Wow.
and a beautiful marriage it was. So she told me about when Grandpa bought his motorcycle. She wanted to learn to ride it. And he let her get on it, and she took off and went right through the chicken coop with it. So,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just it's things like that. And then when our article came out in our newsletter last month about the
Mhm.
importance of kids and grandkids in their seniors' lives, it really hit home that we need to get widen our audience. I've had you come speak at our events that specialize in information for seniors, and I really appreciate that you've done that, and it's been great. But I think there's a whole nother area that should be explored, and that is the older grandkids, maybe 16 and older, to make them stop and think about this so they don't have the same regrets I have. And even the
Mm.
kids, uh,
Mhm.
when you're not feeling well, when you're sick, and the kids come to visit you, they kind of concentrate on what's going on right then and your health and everything. But you don't always sit down and talk about
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
early years. And
Yeah,
this
how
book
do you get there? Yeah.
Yeah, this book inspired me to sit down with one of my daughters, my youngest daughter, and she lives in Wisconsin, so we did it on Zoom, and
Mm.
we would talk once a week on Zoom, and she would write everything down and record it, and
Wow.
she's putting this together and asked
Wow.
me all kinds of questions about my younger
Mhm.
years, and I think that's great. I really do. So you and your mother co-authored this. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm sure your
And
mother.
maybe just a few words on how it works.
Sure.
Um, the book is divided into 42 topics.
Okay.
42. So in other words, if one topic doesn't work for you, then move on, because the bottom line is it should be fun. There should be no stress, and certainly don't want to talk about something if you know that that might be a touchy subject.
Right.
So the 42 topics and over 400 questions, and each topic has a hook. And the hook might be all you need to start the conversation. Like, oh, I wrote down a couple of those. The hook might be the topic might be high school years, and the hook might be on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your high school experience?
Okay.
Hmm. So then you have to think about that. You're both thinking about that. And that might be a real easy one for someone or not. And if it's not so easy, then there are follow-up questions with every hook. And for example, with this hook, the follow-up might be, describe your personality as a teen. How did you feel about your parents? Do you remember, what did you do to earn spending money? Huh.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that each of these questions might lead you in a different direction. And if the conversation's good, then put the book away and just go with it. But if you're just kind of ooh, like pulling teeth, well, then there are plenty of little follow-up questions, and you'll be amazed how quickly the time will go, and that the person you're visiting is thinking now about things that he or she may not have thought about for years. And wow, I do have something that she's interested in listening to. You know, I mean, it just can be so validating for the person who thought they had nothing to talk about, and I guess they do have something to talk about. So anyway, easy to use and non-threatening. And as Doug said, this could be the beginning of a biography, but the real intent is not about writing an biography or an autobiography. The real intent is to have quality time in this moment. In this moment, this is really fun. You're the most important person in my life right here, right now. And I'm really interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that is so great. I truly do. Like I said, I've been impressed with the book ever since you and I first met. And we've given away some copies of the book. And yeah. Now, one of the chapters here called Family Outings and Vacations. I love that because I think back, with my folks, and, I grew up in the 50s, and, going to the Wisconsin Dells, uh, um, some of those vacations every year. My one set of grandparents lived in Milwaukee, where I was raised and lived, but my dad's father lived in Duluth, Minnesota. And today it's nothing to hop on the freeway and go to Duluth. Back in the 50s, it was all 2-lane roads. You went through all these towns. It was an all day trip. We'd get up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd leave the house by about 6,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we'd get into Duluth about 6 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And mom would pack a picnic lunch to have on the way up there, and it was just so many good memories about that and fun about that. So that's the kinds of things that, I would hope kids and grandkids would talk to their grandparents about, and find out some of those things, because like you said, it's not about writing an autobiography. It's about just knowing who this person you love and care for is.
Right. And just a little, one more thought about the vacations, we might find out that their family never went on a vacation. I mean, vacation might not be part of
Right.
that life, but that's important to know too.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or so what did your family do for fun?
Right.
What did you do for fun? I think that question's in there too, because not all of us had the same opportunities, but everybody was doing something.
Doing something for fun.
Right,
Exactly.
right,
I know when
right.
I told my daughter that, our average evening was, grandma would be sitting in her chair crocheting, or
Mm.
I'm sorry, grandma would be repairing stuff. She'd darn socks and put buttons back on. Mom would be crocheting. My dad would be reading a book, and grandpa would be kind of dozing off and waking up. And on the radio, because we had no TV then, on the radio, we would have one of the shows like Fibber McGee and Molly, which probably most of our audience today wouldn't have any idea who that is. But I mean, those are fond memories. So It's why do you think the book's important?
Well, I think it's important because I think that there are so many people out there. You know, people are living longer, and some of them have, opportunities to get out and be with people, but sometimes they don't for all kinds of different reasons. And I think this book is so important because it's a resource for family, children, grandchildren, for caregivers, for volunteers, for anyone who, for whatever reason, spends time with the elderly. So wherever that person happens to be, whether in their own home or in a different facility, that they aren't so lonely, and that they do have time to really share the positives and the negatives about their life experience. It's important. I think very often younger people with really good intentions, there's, if you can't, we're all kind of glued to our cell phones, and conversation is not always a priority. And even if it is, well, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And everybody isn't so gifted to come up with the questions just on the spot. So this is a nice little resource to have for everybody. It's
Joan,
enlivened a lot of family reunions, and you learn something about the person next to you that you never knew.
well,
Yeah.
Joan, if somebody's interested in getting the book, how would they do that? How would they go about that?
Book is available on Amazon.com, and the publisher is Wheatmark. So if somebody wanted multiple copies for whatever their situation might be, you can get a bulk rate through Wheatmark, but for a single copy, Amazon's a good bet. And I hope you have free shipping.
Okay, and then I think that the bookstore here in town also has.
If they don't have it, they could get it. I know Barnes and Noble has gotten copies for us, so, yeah.
But, well, Joan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, tell us about your book. I'm so happy you and your mom authored this book together and had that opportunity to do that. And I'm so happy that the book is a success. So I wish you all the very best.
Oh,
And,
thank you, Doug. You're a wonderful advocate for us, and I really appreciate that.
well, I and Visiting Angels both really appreciate you. So, folks, we're going to be signing off for now. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all out there, and we'll talk soon. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yes.